the list. Oops. So we'll kind of maybe provide a reminder that we are going to record this so that we'll have the recording to share with others who were not able to participate in the meeting. But we want to go kind of through the roster of participants in today's meeting and ask you to provide just a brief introduction. As you can see on screen, if we can keep this to about 1 minute per person, your name, the role that you play, if you're affiliated with an organization, where on the planet you're located. And for some of you that may differ from the home base of the organization where you work, and a brief comment about your primary area of interest in terms of the work that the Alliance will be doing. And just for the sake of convenience, I'm going to run down and call on people based on where they show up in my participant list. And I'll save our colleagues from DXtera for the end of this. But if we could start with Dave Jarbo, if you could activate your camera and come online to introduce yourself, please.
Okay, I think my camera's on. It looks like my microphone's on. Yep. I'm Dave Jarbo. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology and STEAM with the Harrison School District. We're located in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And my primary interest is we are a heavily titled district with a high rate of minority students. And so looking at the K-12 market and what could be happening with some of these products, just, want to make sure that we're doing due diligence for our students. And, there's a lot of information out there about how these products could possibly do harm to students if we're not careful, especially when they look at some of the predictive natures of the algorithms. And so that's my primary interest. I was just reading an article from the Brookings Institute this morning about artificial intelligence and the crisis it's causing in higher ed, and that it even says that the enrollment algorithms may be doing harm to students because it's just about enrollment, getting the dollars, and not maybe about student success.
Exactly. Yeah, great. Thanks, David. It's wonderful to have someone in the front line of education kind of participating right from the start with the Alliance. So welcome. If we could maybe turn next to Ken Asai.
Hello, I'm Ken Asai. I'm with the Community College System of New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, I actually am in Merriman, New Hampshire. My interest is pretty much just to listen and understand what's going on in this arena. I don't think we have any algorithms that we're using to enroll students, but I'd really like to understand what the what this whole role could possibly entail and possible for future types of enrollment activities at the community college.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks so much, Ken. And next, if we could hear from Beth Hogan.
He's furiously trying to turn everything back on again. Yeah, hi. Sorry about that. So I'm Beth Hogan. I am based in Berlin in Germany, and I have been working as a consultant for the past 8 years, predominantly in the K-12 area. I work with ministries of education and larger governmental organizations, as well as a lot of the major tech corporations and startups in terms of digital strategies and future-proofing digital solutions. And I have also been doing a lot of research with my role of as acting managing director of the European EdTech Alliance into AI across the whole of Europe, and some of the ethical and privacy concerns that exist there as well. And I look forward to supporting the EdSafe AI Alliance as well moving forward.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Beth. And next, if we could go to Fabi Gangi.
Thank you, Jim. My name is Fabi Gangi. I'm the Executive Director of Southern New Hampshire University Labs. We're a strategic R&D for the university where we're actively engaged in experimentation tied to emerging technologies, including AI. The university is very mindful of ethical considerations that will need to be carefully examined before we begin the implementation of AI. into our operations. And so I'm joining this alliance in order to be amongst peers and bring back to the university thoughtful considerations.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Fabi. And next, if we could turn to Karen Vignari.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Dale. I hope all is well. Glad to be here. I'm Karen Vignari. I'm Vice President of Digital Transformation for the Association of Public and Land Grant Universities. I am interested in probably, I'm going to be slightly more, and I don't mean to sound judgmental. I want to be slightly more positive about the power of AI over the harm. I know we have to look at both, but I'm very, very excited about being able to use AI in ways that complement our faculty behaviors in the classroom. So I'm very interested in trying to figure out which of the AI-based technologies are going to support universities, particularly in their mission to be much more equitable. I think that's what we're all saying, but I do want to make sure I promote the fact that I think this is just going to be great technology to do this. We do have to do it well.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Karen. And now if we could move around the planet to Cashio Hira.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be located. My name is Cashio Hira. I'm a specialist manager with JET Education Services, and we define ourselves as a non-profit advocate consultancy located in Johannesburg. So although my organization is in Johannesburg in South Africa, and I primarily work on the African continent and with some international development organizations, I'm actually based in Okinawa, Japan. So it is 11:15 here, and that is what Dale meant when he said I might not be as chipper as, as I have been in the past. Yeah, so my primary areas of interest here, JET is involved in a number of projects, both within South Africa and across the African continent, which deal with kind of artificial intelligence and its uses for vulnerable populations like refugees and migrants, as well as potentially for national and regional qualifications frameworks. We work heavily in interoperability and have a few ambitious projects in that area within South Africa. The PSET Cloud is probably the biggest one. And I myself am an AI and education researcher. I have been commissioned to do work for GIZ and UNESCO, in this area. So thank you very much. And I really look forward to contributing to both the positives and the negatives.
Terrific. Thanks, Kelly. We'll try to keep the meeting very lively to hold your attention since it's so late in the evening there. Okay, next, and speaking of lively and entertaining, if we could next turn to Rich Silva.
Wow, thanks, Jim. My reputation precedes me, apparently. Rich Silva, I do analytics and innovative technology for Bay Path University in Massachusetts. I'm located in Southern Connecticut, where it is a bright, sunny morning. And in my capacity at Bay Path, I've overseen two major initiatives that are utilizing AI and machine learning, one being our predictive analytics student success model and retention models, and the other being our adaptive learning system, which actually utilizes a neural network to drive the adaptive learning into our LMS. So I'm very interested in, getting more involved in, the do's and don'ts and the cautions, and there's a lot of potential for bias in data sets and training sets and all sorts of things that can be unintentionally introduced. So I think this is a very timely topic for us to be discussing.
Great, thanks so much, Rich. And next, if we could shift over to Russ Gelling.
Yes, I'm Russ Gelling. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm interested in innovations in technology for education and psychological health. I spent a long time in the military as a program manager at DARPA and Office of Naval Research on the other areas, looking at education training and how to treat PTSD and other issues. I left and became the executive director for STEM education at the U.S. Department of Education under Barack Obama as an appointee. And then at the end of the administration, helped put together the Gates Foundation and Chan Zuckerberg Initiative AirDiff program that was recently announced. And right now I'm just advising various groups on technology innovation. I've worked with Sesame Street, so I've had a very wide and varied career overall.
Okay, well, and Russ, if you wouldn't mind, for folks who may not have you up on a larger screen, could you point out your Sesame Street kind of memorabilia behind you? So
yes, so when I retired from the military, Sesame Street created a Muppet in my likeness and a video to go with it to roast me. So again, it was a strange military retirement ceremony, replete with Muppets and other things going on. So
okay, excellent. Thanks so much.
But glad to be here. This is an exciting program, and a lot of the work I was doing was centered around AI. Also spent a stint as the chief scientific officer at the American Psychological Association. So hope I can bring some of this to the program.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much, Russ. And next, if we could move on to Steve Ritter.
Hi, I'm Steve Ritter. I'm founder and chief scientist at Carnegie Learning, coming to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the US. Carnegie Learning is a curriculum provider, primarily in K-12, and we're probably best known for our Mathia intelligent tutoring system, which is used for middle and high school mathematics. Which is based on and incorporates AI algorithms. Most relevant maybe to this project is we do have a research project with the University of Illinois and University of Pennsylvania, focusing on understanding potential algorithmic bias in the ways that we pick problems for students to do and judge student mastery within our system. And more generally are really interested in issues related to how we ensure that our AI is applied equitably.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much, Steve. Great to see you again. And now if we could move over to Tom Capeto.
Hello, my name is Tom Capeto. I'm based in Boston. I'm affiliated both with DXtera and Boston College, where we've been writing an open source student system for the last 10 or so years. My interests primarily lie in student success, program completion, and issues of privacy and equity are important to us. So interesting learning more about what this group comes up with.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. And I see that Jody has just joined us. And since you missed the intro, but you'll see up on the screen the list of questions or topics that we're asking people to provide a brief self-introduction on. So Jody, I will defer to you and try to learn the pronunciation of your last name.
Oh, it's exactly as it's spelled on Lis. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to join this. My name is Jody Lis. I'm a senior advisor for an international health organization. And so I'm not part of your world at all. I just really want to be able to learn about it and understand it. I'm currently in a master's degree for learning analytics. And this is an area that I really want to focus on as I continue my journey in using digital learning. And I've been implementing digital learning interventions in Africa for over 20 years. So really understand that concept, but this is an area of interest that I want to grow and learn from you all. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. And then if we can maybe pivot over to the DXtera team and start with Lauren Lopez.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Lopez. I'm the VP of Operations at DXtera, here to support the EdSafe AI Alliance in whatever way possible. I'm located in Chicago, Illinois. My background is in student services. Most recently, I was leading student success and completion initiatives at the City Colleges of Chicago.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lauren. And next, Jeff Merriman.
Hello all, Jeff Merriman. I'm with DXtera Institute, the CTO and co-founder of the Institute. I'm located in southern New Hampshire in the United States. As many of you know, a lot of the work that we do revolves around helping particularly higher education organizations get access, better access and management of data from multiple systems. A lot of the conversations that led to EdSafe AI had to do with, with access to all this data and the need for data to train, demonstrate, test analytic solutions, machine learning, AI tools, whatnot. Are there ways that we can form organizations or processes to make that data safely available for those purposes? So that was a lot of the conversations we were having over the last couple of years. EdSafe AI is sort of a big thing that came out of that conversation. So that sort of gives you an idea of kind of why we're interested in it and what our background is around this.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Jeff. And Dale, would you care to offer any comments at this stage?
Sure, thanks. For those who don't know me, Dale Allen, I serve as the president and co-founder of DXtera. And with Jim, we have stepped forward to bring together the EdSafe AI Alliance, DXtera as the managing nonprofit, and Jim and I kind of serving as the face of that to help facilitate a growing community of interested parties, and we'll give more updates here today. But it's great to see all of you, and I'll direct this comment to Jody. Jody, this is an open community where we want everyone to join in and participate, so please do become more formally involved and help teach us, just as we can help share across the community with you. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Jim.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dale. You can read faster than I can speak, so I won't read through this particular slide, but I will make just two quick observations. One is that I think given the diversity represented in the participants in this call and in the follow-up or kind of twin call that we'll have later in the day, so that we can match up with people in different time zones around the planet more conveniently. I think, we are the right group of people to have in the room. And I think through our own personal networks, we can bring others into the discussion, which primarily I think is going to, as your comments reflected, focus on one part on how we can help achieve the positive potential of the use of AI in education. And on the flip side of that, how we can identify and define standards and benchmarks that will help prevent some of the negative things that the misuse of AI could bring into the field. So we're trying to get at least a relatively early start in the marketplace to define some standards and bring together like-minded people and organizations to map out the positive direction that we can then try to move the field. And we think that eventually or ultimately, out of the processes that we'll put in place, that we can start to shape the marketplace and potentially create a set of standards or certifications that will provide some guidance to people who might end up purchasing or using services, so that they can tell what's safe for use in education versus things that may present some risk to their institutions or their students. So with that, Dale, why don't I kick this back over to you so that we can move through the updates.
Great, and I stole this slide from my colleague Beth Hogan at a recent presentation we did together for Israel EdTech Week, with some slight modifications, Beth, I apologize, but with your indulgence. We're seeing increasingly around the world, and all of you know this just by the representative sample that's here today. We have folks from around the globe who are involved in AI initiatives or researching them or seeking to expand the use of them, but are running into the same roadblock around the world, that policy, regulators, consumers are all uncertain or fearful at best, maybe, of the capabilities and potential of what we are doing or what you would be doing with an AI or machine learning algorithm or tool. And so part of our collective possibility is about informing those policymakers and regulatory bodies with the end goal of, can we increase that trust and understanding in the marketplace? As Jim noted before, we're in the process of a planning process for about 3 months or 1 quarter to develop an alliance that can start to work on these aspects together, where this openness and transparency can help support that trust that I just mentioned, and policy and benchmarks, as well as standards that potentially could be tested against. But it needs to involve the market, the market leaders, the companies, the industry, the consumers, the users, and the thought leaders in those shared discussions. And so that's what we've been doing over the last, well, we've been doing this for about 18 months now. And we really have come to the conclusion that, you know, as we announced in August at the ASU GSV Summit, last month's meeting, we had one of the co-panelists who presented that with us, with Erin Mode from Innovate EDU, which is a group focused on K-12 interoperability and solutions for the K-12 market in the US in particular. But we were also joined by Steve Ritter, who's on this call today. And you heard his area of interest already, but we really came out of the gate with this notion that the safety, accountability, fairness, and efficacy are kind of four pillars that seem to be needed to establish that trust in the marketplace. And so we have focused on that and continue to move forward on that with the notion that EdSafe AI and our alliance should and could focus our efforts in working groups to develop these certifications or benchmarks for activities. And again, we use this monthly process. We have a lot of offline conversations going on, and we want to start to more formalize that for the next couple months until we do a December announcement of next steps. But I want to give you just a sense of where we have been. So in the last month, or since August, we now have over 100 organizations and individuals that have become engaged from over 14 countries. We believe I will be out of the office in Europe, going to stay at Beth's apartment, maybe in Berlin. No. I will be attending events in both Paris and Spain, talking with other entities, in particular UNESCO and the Broadband Commission and the Global Education Coalition. We are formalizing, we hope, and in November we should announce, a multinational event series with partners around the globe, where we'll be joining existing events or convening new events focused on increasing the engagement of parties around the globe, again, from those users, the consumers, the policymakers, the companies, the NGOs who are doing kind of the foundational work. I think of Kelly and Jet Education Services as I say that, in the developing countries across Africa and elsewhere. And so we're very excited that we, through collective effort, through shared vision, are coming together with folks, and we hope to finalize as early as Monday, the 25th of October, a launch for this. And if I'm a betting man, I would ask many of you to hold your calendar for January 24th, 2022, World Education Day, to potentially join us for an event in Paris. Seems like a good reason to go to Paris, and if COVID allows it, where people will be able to join in. So more to come there, but we're very excited that the Alliance itself will be a part of this multinational event series and the Global Education Coalition to help inform, develop and inform and shape both policy, practice, standards with active engagement around the world, as we established from the beginning as a goal, that it wasn't Europe focused and US focused, but it had to be international. Additionally, on or about November 1st, we should be adding in some significant talent for staffing the last community meeting. And throughout the time, we have asked people to recommend to us folks who could join the team, who are experts in both these areas, both from a technology standpoint, interoperability standpoint, policy, practice, researchers, to start to come on board as our resources are growing with the membership support from participants, sponsors, and other funding opportunities I'll mention. But we will bring on board a handful of key senior leadership staff members with assignments and roles and responsibility for kind of shepherding activity. These will be the beginning of the staffing, because again, the staffing will correlate with the expectations of the work groups and the growth of those work groups and the governance team. And we imagine adding staffing to come, but we will, like I said, on or about November 1st, we expect to announce at least three key individuals from the leadership positions that will be joining us. And we're thrilled with all of them, but we will wait until the paperwork is final to announce the details on that.
Yeah.
And lastly, oh yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in for those of us who have been involved in other kind of voluntary initiatives that create working groups or task forces to do different things. I think one difference, one insight that we're hoping to pull into this work, having learned some things from other organizations, is that as we create some staffing or bring on people to support the Alliance in different consulting roles, what we really want to do is take best advantage of the thought contributions and kind of members can put into the working group discussions, and then provide some staffing support to keep the work moving between meetings, right? So we'll have people who can provide a little bit of research assistance, do some work and pulling together first drafts, and giving people back some documents to respond to, rather than relying on people who already have full-time day jobs, to try to pull the weight between meetings. So we'll try that out and see how it works. But we've been really appreciative of the suggestions and feedback that people have shared with us to date on that.
And I would also add to that, and the offer of expertise within your organization to join in. So we've had firms who've stepped forward and offered people in their company from marketing and communications to join into a working group, or technical aspects to different working groups, or to provide just support and staffing for different activities as part of a contribution. So that has been quite welcomed and appreciated. On the funding opportunity side, we've had a couple of things that have occurred, and we'll ask for people to be directly engaged in working group around funding and pursuit of opportunities. We've been in conversation and approached already by at least two large philanthropic entities, foundations that are US based, who see the value and need for this in the marketplace and have stepped forward or stepped into conversations with us to offer financial support and other opportunities to grow the Alliance and its engagement, which has been welcomed. And so again, capturing those opportunities and moving forward. Folks can probably imagine of the group in the US who might be interested in this, who that is, but we will ask for people to join into a working group around funding opportunities, and you'll have direct access to those if you do, once your MOUs for membership are done, et cetera. The second is we've actually had some conversations also with venture capital firms who also see a significant need for this trust and understanding in the marketplace. And so a few of them have stepped forward with an interest to be either sponsors or join into activities in a significant way. And as people might have picked up, I have a bit of a biting, sarcastic wit. Sometimes it's good. And in one of the calls recently, they asked what they could do to help. And I said 100 million for a first contribution would seem to be a good start. They didn't say no, but they didn't say yes to that either. But it's a start. I figure, so I see you laughing on my screen, Steve, so you might appreciate that more than others in terms of conversation.
Hey, it's not a no, it could be a yes.
That's right. That's right. So, and just a reminder, again, and also informing people, we've tried to update this slide. One of the things that we picked up on last time is, as we start to think about a member-supported community, and again, at DXtera, we manage communities that are focused on shifting the market in some way or building solutions, or most importantly, engaging people from all different perspectives to come out with a shared solution. In this case, we're using this working model to start as how we think about the member support, the levels of membership that people have, again, both financial, at different levels of financial engagement to help subsidize and support the activities, to folks like in the mission supporter level, who may be, and David, I'll put you you on the spot, so to speak, to share your story. David's, leading activities in a school district with about 12,000 students. It's not typical for them to pay a financial fee to join an organization, but they've stepped forward and are willing to contribute time and energy to serve in governance, but also in other activities. And we have a method to kind of accept that contribution as opposed to financial payment for the mission supporters. But it's great because it allows us to have activity and involvement from anyone who chooses to participate with our organizations, and those who have more means and interest in terms of supporting the Alliance can do so financially. So that's why we have the different levels of membership to give people access to opportunities, but also ensure that in our governance from the steering committee, the leadership council, and the work groups, that we have representation from all levels of membership. And on the right-hand side, we wanted to make sure that we captured and improved this slide from last month, where we're really talking about kind of the users in the marketplace, which are both the consumers and the companies that are implementing, and the policymakers who would be implementing the recommendations that come from us. So I want to make sure we always provide that information. In the last segment, before we get into discussion or questions, which are always welcome throughout, want to continue to highlight where we're at with the proposed working groups, and then I'm going to ask my colleague Jeff Merriman to step forward and talk about some, thinking about scoping the responsibilities for these groups and kind of the priority areas for them to come, not for today, but at least to start the highlights on that. So we started last time with many of these. We've really added in some refinements of language and moved, put in a piece that DXtera, as Jeff had referenced, on open authentic data, where we have a standing work group and want to expand to build other aspects of infrastructure and access to open data for training of tools in the future and how to do that. So with that, let me ask Jeff to join in and pick up for the next a little bit, and then we'll move to discussion and questions and next steps from here as we use this monthly meeting as an update, but also a chance for some input and then offline work to come.
So as we begin to staff up with EdSafe AI Alliance, a big part of this is going to be forming the communities and forming the steering committees and the work groups, various activities that everybody wants to start talking about. We started with this sort of cute acronym, SAFE. It turns out to be a fairly effective way to sort of categorize the things that we're talking about, but it is kind of a gimmick. And as we've been talking to more and more people and identifying the kinds of things that I think the broader community is hoping that EdSafe AI Alliance will be involved in, this is starting to expand, and some of these safe categories are starting to blend and become kind of fuzzy. But let's outline some of the things that we've been talking to people about. In the area of safety, if you look at our website, we talk about security, privacy, and this notion of do no harm. There's going to be a lot of things to look at in this area around security. There are many standards and organizations out there working on issues of security, data security, these sorts of things. Do we define the things new in this space, or do we partner? It's sort of one of the aspects of that. Around privacy, to what extent can the EdSafe Alliance perform research and advise on privacy regulations and policies and how they may be helpful or harmful for the industry that's trying to develop around this. And around, do no harm, what really is possible? What can we be doing? What are the mechanisms for testing and conformance in this area? There's a lot of research out there that shows that there are limitations. We expect there to be limitations in how far one can go in identifying what the underlying motives of any intelligence might be. So these are things we'll be looking at. And when we look at mechanisms, it may not be necessarily all testing, software testing and that kind of thing. I think we need to be open-minded around the kinds of mechanisms we bring forward. Things like transparency, peer review are all going to be on the table. Around accountability, looking at stakeholder responsibility, we really expect to be promoting and partnering with national, international testing organizations. UL and Element have already signed on with us. They're very interested in what we're doing. They already have activity in the more general AI space, and we're going to value their input. Defining best practices for information sharing and transparency in the marketplace, we expect to be among the things we'll be looking at here. How can we help policymakers? And I think we've already talked about this a little bit. How can we help policymakers understand the costs and benefits of the kinds of privacy regulations that are being enacted? I think we all believe in privacy. But we also know that some of the regulations out there are beginning to limit what we can be doing with training and testing AI and analytics algorithms. So these are the kinds of things we'll be looking at. Around fairness, equity, ethics, non-bias. I think we'll be looking at promoting best practices. Hopefully defining benchmarks and standards for AI training data. There's certainly, I think we just have already heard on this call, organizations that are building AI algorithms that are worried about the training data and whether that training data includes bias. And also defining best practices and standards, benchmarks for equity around these sorts of machine learning algorithms. Again, looking at the kind of mechanisms that will be available to us for doing that. Around efficacy, it really comes down to, how do customers, learners, teachers, parents know that an AI algorithm that's being used for teaching is actually doing what it says it does, that it actually is an effective tool. How can we sort of build trust in the marketplace? And this may not be as much around standardization as it may be about the kinds of outreach and work that we can be doing with vendors, with users. How can we help stakeholders, those using these tools, to evaluate and understand kind of what's behind the AI algorithms that might be used for education? I think it's part of the fear is in not knowing how these things work, and to what extent can our alliance help with that transparency. We talk about governance. So we have outlined, as you've seen on the previous slide, some initial framework for governance. We're looking for the community to help us refine that. Defining the roles and responsibilities of steering committees and work groups, setting expectations for the rules of order for how our work groups operate. And also, I think in general, developing guidelines for member contributions. Like any organization, I'm involved in a number of standards organizations. A key issue is for member contributions. What is the licensing around that? Visibility to patents that people might have in this space that start to get referenced in our work and that kind of thing. So working on beginning to define some of these governance issues more clearly is probably going to be an early task that we're going to be looking for help with. Outreach and advocacy, I think it's obvious. We're doing it now. How can we engage more stakeholders in the discussion? How do we document best practice and get that out there to people? And what kinds of global education and outreach efforts can we support? We're already talking about workshops we'll probably be doing internationally in the next year as this progresses. Dale mentioned open authentic data. I think I mentioned that in my intro. It's something that's of keen interest to us and to the AI and analytics community in general. Are there things that we can be doing to promote access to data that is authentic, that can be used for training and demonstrating and testing these kinds of algorithms, but in a safe way? So that's going to be we believe a piece of research and an activity that we're going to be keenly engaged in. And finally, research we heard early on from people interested in the EdSafe Alliance that they feel we could have a real role in promoting the kinds of research that needs to happen in this space, engaging with foundations as we already are, both private and national government foundations that have money and are interested in promoting research around the use of AI and the safe use of AI and the effective use of AI. So these are kinds of things that we've been talking about. They're starting to form into some level of coherence, but we're looking for this group to help us really define this stuff more clearly, identify what's in and out of scope for our work, and for those things that are in scope, how do we prioritize this work and move forward as a community in a really effective way. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And again, as noted on the screen now, in addition, I mentioned one other work group that is already starting to form, which is about fundraising or following through on requests for foundations or other support that is out there. So that is another group. What we would ask you to do is in the next 2 months, we'd really like to get a small group, or as many of you who want to participate, we'll put an open call out to actually help us start working on the scopes and establishing some details forward, so that in December we can share more collective words with the community as opposed to the words from a small group of us. And that is going to be the mantra that you will hear from us all the time, is that we want active participation. We want to provide expert support to it and facilitation capabilities and drafting of documents. But we need to get more folks involved, and we'd like that over the next 2 months. So on the expression of interest forms that we've been using with you that you may have already submitted, we'll track back anyone that's identified a work group that aligns with any of that we mentioned. We'll ask you directly, but we'll also be putting a call out end of this week, probably early next week. We know that people don't like to look at email on Friday. So probably early next week, we'll be putting a call out to officially ask people again just to consider volunteering some time to help draft those work group scopes and be involved in that process. And so Jim and I welcome any questions, comments, suggestions, or jokes that people want to bring forward. Russ already shared his story of his Muppet. If anyone has a Muppet about themselves, they're welcome to share that now as well. So with that, Jim, I'll turn it back to you to help facilitate a little more clearly.
Okay. Oh, sure. Well, thanks, Neil. So maybe what we can start with is just to see if there are any questions of clarification or kind of an explanation that people have before diving into suggestions or any kind of ideas there. But any questions about the process that's been mapped out or the descriptions that have been shared so far? Okay. I've been told that there should be like a 7-second delay kind of teacher rule to see if there's feedback, but I don't have the patience for a full 7 seconds. So I'll move on. In that case, we'll kind of assume that we're more or less on the right track, unless folks will speak up and let us know either in this forum or offline about some adjustments that we ought to consider. But well, let's then open this up for any discussion that you all have about how we can work together most effectively. I think one of the things that I take from the introductions is that we're really fortunate to start off with a multinational kind of global set of perspectives coming to the table, and also representing industry, practice, research, government agency involvement. In the case of Steve and perhaps others, folks who have built companies and been early on in the kind of research and development side of all of this. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to benefit from the collective intelligence of the group, but also any kind of constructive, pushback or feedback within the group that people feel will help move us forward. But what ideas do you have, or are there things that you didn't hear this morning that you think ought to be taken into account as we set the stage to move forward together?
I'll jump in. One thing that I did some work with the Circles project, and I was on the legislative policy group where we came up with 10 factors that we thought legislators should consider around policy developed for AI. But one thing, looking at the scopes that came to my mind was, and I don't know where this would fit in your matrix, as far as teasing out the purpose of the products, because the product I referenced that earlier with the higher ed, it's a product. It's a company selling these platforms to help colleges boost enrollment by predicting how much money to offer, how much discount to offer in tuition to grab that student. And they're probably based on the applications that students fill out, it's crunching that data. So that's kind of like education industry or business.
Yep.
Versus the classroom is totally different purpose for the algorithms. And it might be helpful to tease that out at some point, because policies for one may not fit policies for others. So that's just a thought I had.
Okay. Yeah, great observation, Dave. And for those who are not familiar, Circles is a research network that is being managed by a group out of Digital Promise, which is one of the coordinators for the NSF AI and education research funding that has been pushed out into the field. And as Dave is mentioning, AI is typically like fast math optimized for something, right? In the case of enrollment algorithms, it may be to bring in as much net tuition revenue as possible, and targeting then the spend on financial aid, or even offering admission if part of the algorithm is to help boost a college's yield percentage so that it looks better in U.S. News and World Reports rankings. Those are things that ought to be visible, right? Ought to be transparent. And in the learning space, and I'll defer to Steve and others on this, we're not optimizing for net tuition. We're not optimizing necessarily for speed if we're trying to get at comprehension or learning, but it's not at all clear, or I think it's not at all typical that people will talk about what the algorithms are optimized for. And in contrast to the consumer world around Facebook or Google, we're also not, or YouTube, we're not optimizing for eyeball time so that we can sell more ads, right? And I think for us to be trusted in a world that's getting more and more AI exposure in these other areas, we do have to be, I think, much more clear and transparent about what it is that we're optimizing for, and for whom.
That's Jim, this is Dale. That's a great point, and I just want to use this as maybe an example of the alliance and collaboration. So Digital Promise has become an active member with the EdSafe AI Alliance, and we're in conversation with them to kind of share the working group activity that they're already involved with across the US, and again, open it broader so that we can have shared learnings and findings, and also advocacy that comes out of that. So you'll hear and see more with Digital Promise to come. But Kelly, I think you had your hand up, and before you fall asleep, we probably want to get you any comments from you.
I know, I was thinking I'd like to wait a little bit longer, but I probably need to jump in as soon as I can. So I have a few thoughts. I think first, I like the revised diagram. I like the inclusion of the users. I think it looks really good, and the methodology is sound. And I like the idea of what we would call facilitated working groups. So working groups with some muscle to help them actually get stuff done. So I think everything is looking really good to me. The big problem for JET is going to be choosing what we want to be involved in, because the answer is everything. But I just have a couple of small things. So the first thing is, I heard the phrase "do no harm" a couple of times. And I would like to push us a little bit further than do no harm to AI for public good. Yeah. And the reason for that is because I don't think do no harm is sufficient, actually. If MIT is correct about the environmental cost of actually training an algorithm, it has to do significant good in order to be worth the cost of its development, even just environmentally, before you even get into, time and privacy and, all of the other concessions that we will, as you noted, have to make in order for AI to be unbiased, to be fair, and so on and so forth. So I think that's the first consideration I'd like to put on the table. I think the second is that there may be, and this just might be, I'm a strategic planner, so this might be like my operation brain kicking in, but there might be a bit of a dependency actually between narrowing down the working groups and this advocacy and governance piece. Which that maybe the first thing to do is actually define the goals, like more concretely, the impact that we would have with each of those user groups, and then we could maybe prioritize and evaluate the working groups against those goals, so that it wouldn't just be like, oh, these are our best area of interest, but these would be the strategic levers where we'd be the most likely to make the most impact. That's it for me. Not bad for midnight, hey.
Not bad for midnight at all. I'll speak for myself. I'd love to be that good first thing in the morning, let alone at midnight. And I would echo your comments about the, again, goals, priorities. I think that's partly what we're trying to open the door to right now is with more capacity and experts coming on board and opening, supporting this community to define and prioritize the work, because we can only imagine the work getting more, both a combination of discrete in terms of priority areas and purpose of said work between different interests that come in, and facilitation and needs for that. So to prioritize that is always going to be important in setting goals for any of the work groups. And that's part of what we're thinking about now with the scoping and kind of defining the workload to begin that again, and then prioritizing off of the original pillars and then modifying as we go. So we'll add you to all of those teams, Kelly, because you have plenty of time in your life. We appreciate that.
So I want to follow up on that by kind of suggesting that one thing that we might be able to do is work with other groups. Digital Promise is generally kind of favorable to educational technology, and there are other groups that play different roles. One of them I'm thinking of is the Student Data Privacy Consortium, which has been involved with defining legal agreements for what educational technology providers can do with data. And so, some examples of things that have come out of those, some of those agreements, either from them or other places, are things like we see restrictions on no data mining, where data mining is often defined in a particular way with respect to marketing, which seems fine to prohibit, but it's often, as somebody who's published in educational data mining, areas where we're mining data to try and improve student outcomes, I just hate to see that phrase being kind of defined in a negative way like that. Another areas, which is another area that would be really interesting to think about, is a lot of agreements from California have a provision where they say that you can't use data to make product recommendations, which is one of these interesting kind of middle ground areas, because clearly we want systems to make recommendations about what activities and instructional resources students should access to improve their learning. But you're right. So there's kind of boundary between recommending an activity that's free versus recommending, hey, you should go buy some tutoring or do something else. Thinking about those kinds of boundary issues, I think would be really good.
Yeah, I think those are two great points, and I'll just jump on them both of collaborating with those and also identifying where things have been developed already is critically important. And it's from, those who don't know me, my background is my PhD is in public policy with a focus on economics. So efficiency and alignment and market choice are really important factors. And so the more we can combine forces, like I use the example of Digital Promise, I've used the IEEE AIS group in the past as, hey, they're working on specific areas to develop standards or processes. Let's align our work. So definitely important. And then what's out there for policy and restrictions, again, not only in the US, but around the world. And Beth Hogan has, a direct linkage and access in the EU space currently, and others in our growing alliance need to be involved. We're increasingly being asked to come into other countries. I referenced we were in Israel last week with EdTech Week, promulgating an open invitation there about the importance of this and alignment with what they're doing, and they're doing a lot in policy practice and growth. And folks across in Russia as well are want to join in. And again, different policies, different practices, but again, should be a part of the shared global conversation. So thank you, Steve, for those comments. I know we're up on time, Jim. Can I maybe just complete with some reminders, and then folks are welcome to stay on after that?
You bet. You bet.
Great. So just reminders, MOUs for membership and the work group interest forms. We want you to identify what you want to do. We'll be following up with people about the interest in those different work groups for helping us draft, and also putting a call out next week with a copy of this slide deck. The recording will also be posted on the website with the slide deck, but we'll make sure everyone has access to those things. The next community meeting is in November. We are using the same date or day of the month I guess this is the third Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern and 8 o'clock Eastern, which works to get folks from around the world to be involved at a comfortable time of their choosing. And our goal is in December is to use that time period for the leadership and kind of roadmap launch to identify the original governance participants, who's on the founding steering committee, leadership council, working groups, and again, with some definition to those working groups with goals, priorities, and other collaborations that are going forward with a roadmap for 2022. And lastly, email Jim or I anytime with any questions, comments, or pieces. I will tell you, I referenced I will be heading off to Europe at the end of this week for approximately a week and a half, 2 weeks with work, and then some playtime with family. So I might be a little constrained between the 22nd of October and the 4th of November. But please do reach out and we will get back to you as soon as possible with any questions. So with that, I will say thank you for joining today. I will stay on for a little bit if anyone, and Jim will as well, if anyone has any additional questions. But for the rest of you, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, terrific kind of planning and organizing meeting. So I can't wait till we really roll up our sleeves and get into the work. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Stop sharing.
Thanks all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.